Is there such thing as fate? To what extent do we control our own destinies? In Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, George and Lenny are two migrating workers who arrive on a new farm to work. They run into some conflict with people there, and in the end, because of Lenny's obvious mental problems, Lenny ends up getting killed as he is always destroying things. In a way, Lenny's mental issues that he was born with fated him to die an early death. In the story, George says to Lenny, if you just happen to get in trouble like you always done before, I want you to come right here and hide in the brush. Here, George is making the assumption that Lenny will get in trouble again, telling the reader that Lenny getting in trouble is nothing new. This is because Lenny was born with his mental problems and it disables him from knowing right from wrong. This is why he gets in trouble so often, because he doesn't know the difference. This fates Lenny to an early death because he continues to do wrong and without any boundaries. He ends up killing the only woman on the ranch they are on, and he is killed for it. Earlier on, Lenny says to George about their time on the ranch before this one, just wanted to feel that girl's dress, just wanted to pet it like a mouse. Here we can see Curly's wife's fate, who is the only woman on the ranch. We see that because she is living on the ranch, she was fated to die because Lenny would show up one day. Because she was a woman of that time, she was very lonely, as women in that time were very isolated. Because of this, she was dangerously flirtatious, and it set her up with the wrong people, which in this case happened to be Lenny. Because she was a flirty woman with Lenny around at the same time, she was fated to die, and she did it at the hands of Lenny. This was her destiny because she didn't have boundaries as to who it was she flirted with. Both these characters prove that people do not have much of an ability to alter their destinies. This is because you cannot change the way you were born or the disabilities you were born with, and you can't change your personality traits. In the next book, Macbeth, by William Shakespeare, we can see the effects of fate on Macbeth. Macbeth is a loyal man to King Duncan. When he is foretold his future of becoming king by 3 supernatural witches, he becomes hungry for power. As he goes on, he is told by the witches of his downfall, and he is eventually killed by another Thane. We can see through Macbeth how destiny is very hard to alter. In the story, Macbeth says, "That will never be. Who can impress the forest, bid the tree unfix his earthbound root? Sweet Bodemans could." This is said after Macbeth is told that his downfall will arrive at the entirety of a forest. This seems ridiculous at first, as no one would expect a forest to be moving. However, an opposing Thane and his army, using the forest wood as spears, attack Macbeth, and it leads to his eventual killing. This tells the reader that even if your fate seems or sounds ridiculous, it is still very hard to alter it and likely to happen. No matter how it happens or is going to happen, your destiny is set in stone. Another example of Macbeth's unchangeable destiny is seen when an apparition of the witch says, "The power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth." Here Macbeth is told that he can be harmed by no man born of a woman. This also seems ridiculous because every man is born of a woman. However, Macbeth comes to find that Macduff, another Thane, was born of a C-section. He was also warned by the witches to watch out for Macduff. Macbeth realizes here that again, no matter how impossible your fate sounds, it is likely to happen. Macduff ends up being the one to kill Macbeth. Both these occurrences prove to the reader that even if it sounds impossible, your destiny cannot change. No matter how it is to come upon you, it will happen as told. We can continue to see these ideas in the modern day through the problems of air pollution. According to an article that was written by the US government called Air Pollution, Current and Future Challenges, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas pollution leads to more frequent and intense heat waves that increase mortality, especially among the poor and the elderly. The article also says that scientists warn that carbon pollution and resulting climate change are expected to lead to more intense hurricanes and storms, heavier and more frequent flooding, increased drought, and more severe wildfires. With as many things we have in our daily lives that emit carbon dioxide, we have fated ourselves for these outcomes. We cannot live without many of these carbon dioxide emitting objects, and with that, our destinies are set in stone. These disasters are bound to happen someday with the continuing release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. In one way or another, our fate will take over as we can no longer do anything to stop it. In the story Hansel and Gretel by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, we can see some of the characters and their destinies as well. In the story, 2 young children are cast out of their home by their parents and wind up finding a home in the middle of the forest. The owner of that home turns out to be a wicked witch who intends to eat Hansel and Gretel. In the story it says, when a child fell into her power, she killed it, cooked it, and ate it, and that was the feast day with her. The wicked witch wants to eat any child that falls into her hands. However, this is what fated her eventual death because Hansel and Gretel were different. They were smart. In the end, they outsmarted her. In the text it says, "Then Gretel gave her a push that drove her far into it and shut the iron door and fastened the bolt. Oh, then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away and the godless witch was miserably burned to death. The wicked witch was fated her miserable death because she had no boundaries as to what child she ate. Because she picked a fight with Gretel, she ended up dying for it. Once she decided to bring in the two children, her destiny was already made. It wasn't going to be changed." Throughout these stories and articles, we continue to see one reoccurring theme. Once your fate is told, it will not be changed. It will come in any shape or form and will happen no matter what. There is very little you can do as yourself to alter your such fate.